Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, angel therapy practitioner, Reiki master, and empowerment coach. And today I want to talk about the full moon in Gemini on December 7th at 8:08 p.m. Pacific time. This video is going to be based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I say Aries, I'm going to be talking about whole sign Aries rising sign. So if you don't know your rising sign, you're going to want to go to one of the millions of free birth calculators on the internet and just plug in your location and time of birth. I'm assuming you know the date of birth, and you will be able to calculate that and know exactly what your rising sign is, as well as your moon, which is also super, super important. Because, for instance, if you have a Gemini moon, this full moon is going to be very powerful for you, to say the least. So let's go on to talk about what's going to happen during this full moon. Full moons are when it's the brightest phase of the moon. It's when a cycle that started with the new moon, which for Gemini was back on May 30th, 2022 at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time. Seeds of thought were planted, seeds and ideas were sprung. The beginning of a process of evaluation began, and I want to say it because I feel as if there have been so many changes within the world at large that now this has really spawned each individual to look at their everyday lives, their thought process, what they're reading, what they're speaking, who they're communicating with via emails, how many subscriptions you're going to have for the various apps, looking at our roadways, our neighborhoods, our communities. Gemini is without a doubt the sign that rules the most of our everyday life for me. The other signs seem to have more definition, whereas Gemini feels very broad to me. And the more we become advanced in technology, the broader that particular house becomes. So the full moon in Gemini is actually going to be conjunct Mars retrograde, both at 16 degrees. The 16th degree is the Cancerian degree. Once we go through the first 12 degrees of a house, we start to repeat ourselves. So 13 is Aries, 14 is Taurus, 15 is Gemini, and 16 is Cancer. I think this is very important because Mars being retrograde in Gemini right now has been very frustrated, very kind of feeling thwarted, feeling like actions aren't happening fast enough. And one of the challenges with Mars in Gemini is, and Mars sort of in general, is having lots of ideas and then not really following through to completion, because there's a sense of boredom or a sense of something may stall, and then Mars gets kind of wants to move on to something else. So I believe that what we're going to see within this full moon is a culmination of our own participation in our angry thoughts, our angry speech, our wanting to experience harmony. And yet, as we see injustices, the shock and awe, the anger that it can bring up makes us in many ways mirror the very energy that we don't want to experience anymore. This full moon in Gemini conjunct Mars, and what a conjunction means is literally the energies of the two planets are fused together. They're so close together that they start to blend. And when it's exact, what we're seeing is the planet that rules our emotional body and the planet that rules our anger and frustration are married together. Now, there's a couple saving graces to this, because the moon will be sextile Chiron at 12 degrees Aries retrograde. Chiron is the point in our chart that represents our wound. It also represents a gift. It represents an opportunity to seek wisdom within the wound, and in doing so, we transform that wound into something that brings great satisfaction and helps other people. So I believe that this mental process that I think is really the focus of this particular full moon. It's like, what am I talking about? Is my speech matching what I want to experience? I think a lot of us have had a feeling of being held back or being tethered to something. And I think this full moon and the illumination that it brings will untether us, or at least illuminate our co-creation within the situation, so we can shift our perception, or we can shift the amount of time we're concentrating on something. We have this full moon in Gemini, and it's conjunct planet Mars, trining Saturn at 20 degrees Aquarius. Now, a lot of people think that Mars and Saturn don't really go together, because Saturn wants to slow things down. Saturn represents depression and oppression and repression. It also represents authority and government. And frankly, I think of Saturn as a planet that is like a very great military leader. So now Saturn is mentoring Mars in the action. Sometimes is no action is actually action, giving an opportunity for the universe to open a space, bring an illumination, which this full moon is going to do. I'm convinced it will. And in doing so, we become a strategic warrior. We become more of the hero energy and the pioneering energy that Mars has to offer. So I'm hoping that when Mars gets to its final retrograde degree, which I believe is the 8th degree, transformational Scorpion degree, and moves back through Gemini, Mars is starting to look at the landscape a little more differently and feel more confident about his ability to create within his own neighborhood or her own neighborhood. Gemini moon by nature is versatile and open. It's adaptable. It's usually very pleasant and charming, can be very quick and witty and funny. I think a lot of comedians have some Gemini energy in them. They usually keep their irritability for their family and the people that know them the best. When in public, they're very engaging and curious and in the know, want to know what's going on with you, who you dating, that kind of thing. When there is a problem, they're going to want to talk it out. And the thing about Gemini that differs from Virgo is Gemini is because of the wit and the charm, it's a very persuasive orator. So when there are problems, this is where Gemini really excels in being able to express him or herself in a way that is palatable to the other person. Now, Mars in Gemini, and Gemini moves quickly. We know Mercury zips around the zodiac. It's all about our everyday activities, our roadways, zip, 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 where we're going. Mars is the same, if not even more, an escalated quick energy. So what we're going to see here is the potential that Mars conjunct this moon might illuminate some projects, some things you've been working on that have been stalled, or actually may not even serve your bigger picture. They may be things that you felt more comfortable with. And in doing so, you've worked on those when they're not really taking you where you want to go. And so the sense of frustration that this retrograde is bringing can be diminished by physical activity. Mars loves physical activity. You could go for a run. You could have sex with your partner. You could go to the gym. You could just go for a hike. Any sort of movement, even dance would be good for you here. That helps kind of bring the frustration down and start to integrate the mental and physical process together. So I think that as we walk into this full moon, it's on December 7th. I said that earlier. That's also a very pivotal day in the United States history. I believe it was D-Day. And here I think that we're looking at divine disruption, as D-Day offers us new hope, new thoughts. A lot of what I'm kind of getting in the back of my head right now is that Mars is angry and resentful and can hold on to things and just beat them to death. And usually they don't really get, the kind of apologies or validation that humans aren't very good at that kind of stuff. And so it just tends to manifest and magnetize the anger and frustration. And I think there's a very good possibility that the main theme of this full moon is like, how much time do I want to spend angry and pissed off about somebody else's bad behavior? And at this time, am I actually robbing myself of my own happiness? Somebody once said to me, do you want to be right, Teri, or do you want to be happy? And of course, my answer was, I want to be both. But really, sometimes that's not practical. So rather than trying to be right, being happy was trying to express myself in a way that I could receive hearing. Constructive criticism, constructive conversation versus gunny sacking and bringing in, miles and miles of history into the conversation and watching the person glaze over, So I think that this is a really, really powerful moon. I think that in the various houses, we're going to see, I'm just going to touch on the houses very quickly for the various signs, because these are going to be the environment that you're going to find this illumination coming through, this sort of being able to see a cycle where you had planted seeds of something you want to experience, a shift you want to make in the way you're thinking, a shift in your focus and in your everyday life that started back at the end of May, early June. And then now we're going to see a culmination, meaning this, it may not be the end of the cycle altogether, but the end of the chapter that takes you on to the next chapter. So you find that, job lead, or you meet that person and that starts something else. So, all right. So quickly, Aries, this is going to be in your third house. Gemini is naturally the third house. Again, this is going to be dominate the roadways, the emails, the communications with your teammates, your workmates, your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors. I have, being aware of Mars being in my third house, being an Aries rising, last weekend, my neighbor wasn't home, but she apparently gave her keys to some family with 3 very small, loud children, and they decided to blare the music so loudly I couldn't even hear my television set. Now, my first thought was to bang on the door. My second thought was, don't do that. Mars is in Gemini right now, being mad and cranky. So Aries, I want to offer this for you. As this Gemini full moon reveals a certain way that you think, maybe it's an opportunity for you to start to be the peaceful warrior versus a little bit feeling like, well, I'm right, so I should be validated, because I don't know if that's going to get you anywhere with the people around you. Okay, Taurus, the Gemini is your second house of skills, talent, money, your voice, meaning this is where the soul first experiences its ability to speak and to express itself. So this might be really an opportunity to illuminate. It's also the house of the second house is naturally ruled by Taurus, and that rules my family history. Gemini rules my siblings. So this Gemini house may allow you on some level to have an illumination, a culmination, an epiphany about how you compare yourself to other people, including your siblings, including your family. And if indeed you're giving yourself permission to evolve past whatever the initial role or box was that they put you in, and now to express yourself authentically with joy and with a sense of security that the universe has your back. Gemini, this is going to be in your first house of self. So this has been a long cycle of sort of really, I think, determining what in your everyday life is truly important to you and what is routine-based or ritually based. You may find that as you have planted the seeds for a more enjoyable experience within work, within your teammates, within your neighborhood, you may have experienced a lot of disruption over these last few months. But again, I like to refer to disruption as divine disruption, because there's a divinity to the choices I make during that process. And when you put yourself at the forefront of your wants and desires, and then you're aware of, what am I thinking about? What am I speaking about? Am I speaking more about my problems because I can't find a solution? And if you can't find a solution, let me offer you this mantra: everything's working out for me. The universe has my back. and on just align to that, because I think this is a real opportunity for you to start this. This culmination is always going to start a new cycle. And this new cycle feels like it's more about being authentic to your personal needs, maybe getting out of the routines and breaking things up so you're feeling more stimulated. Your sense of curiosity has been stoked and you're getting a zest for life again. Cancer. Gemini is your 12th house of privacy, of dreams, meaning literally sleeping dreams, of hospitals, of prisons, of ashrams and retreats. It's a very, very personal house. It is a house often referred to as the house of self-undoing, because sometimes there's a bit of illusion that happens here. The 12th house is naturally ruled by Neptune, and Neptune being so compassionate, sometimes in the compassion, it gets trampled over. So Cancer, Gemini being your 12th house, I think there may be a conclusion that you have come to about your mind versus your intuition, meaning obviously in the human experience, we want to use both in a balanced way. But for my Cancers, I think what you may see is that the everyday mind that gets caught up in its routines and in its what it's being stimulated by, which can be very fear-based. Okay, I think this full moon is going to bring an illumination where you've got to dig deep into your intuition again, to really go back to basics of what Cancer represents, which is self-nurturing, which then teaches the people we love how to nurture themselves. It's that intuitive connection to all that is in the universe. I can't help but think of how the 4th house represents our homeland, our country. And I live in the United States, and Native Americans were here first. And they honored Mother Sky, or Mother Earth and Father Sky. And they paid attention to the leaves and the messages that came across their path through the various animals and the various streams and elements of nature. So Cancer, I think this is a super important for you to get back to the basics of who you are, which is a spiritual being. You are energy inhabiting a physical experience. And as you give life to your own sense of what meditation works for you, because you don't have to just sit and you can dance, you can write poetry, you can let your imagination run wild. And this is in many ways a very palatable and important and influential energy to put into the universe, so you can start to see yourself begin this new chapter as we see the full moon bring a culmination of a thought, an idea, where you're spending the most of your time in here. And I think when you go to the place of the 12th house that is spiritual, that is meditative, that is connected to that which I cannot see, but I can feel, you're going to feel a sense of power moving forward. Leo, Gemini is your 11th house of hopes and dreams, of networks, of expansion, of genius, of space travel, the stars. I want to offer this. I think that there is the potential that with this full moon, you've come to the conclusion about where you want to spend your time on the internet. You may choose to remove yourself from some platforms. You may choose to add yourself to some platforms. You may choose to move into areas where you're networking with people who are innovative and people who have forward-thinking ideas that stimulate you and get you excited about your creative juices. I also think that there is the potential that this full moon will bring some sort of information that leads you to a natural step for your next move towards making your dreams come true in the physical 3D world. The 11th house by nature is a upachaya house, which you gain reward as you're seasoned, as time goes by. Leo's not known necessarily for their patience, but at the same time, I think that there is an opportunity for you to just sort of think, am I willing to take the slow, steady steps of the tortoise versus the hare and just continue to move towards my hopes and my dreams without looking too far ahead or too far outside of myself, how other people are thinking and perceiving what I'm doing, Because if indeed you've got too much of a focus on a large group of people accepting what you want to birth into the world, you may find yourself literally get paralyzed, because each one of those people are going to have a different opinion. So I think this is a really powerful full moon for Leo to see how they're thinking about what their hopes and desires are, about what they want to feel rewarded by. And if for some reason they're holding themselves back because they have trepidation about how the masses will respond to your wants and desires, I think it's time to put the masses over to the side and just claim yourself. And then the laws of attraction will bring the right people, the right social networks, the right platforms for you to thrive and grow. Virgo, Gemini is your 10th house of career, public image, public status, naturally ruled by Capricorn. So we could see with this Gemini full moon, I feel like Gemini and Virgo are sort of siblings within themselves. They are both very they're thinkers, they're processors, they're information givers and dispensers, but they just do it in a couple of different ways. So here, what I think is going to happen is there is the potential that there could be, with Mars in the mix here, some sort of angry energy within the workplace, maybe even within I don't know. I can't, when I say the public eye, not everybody has to be on television or on YouTube or hold public office to be in the public eye. I would very much caution Virgo during this time on around, say December 5th through maybe December, let's say 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, around there, 3 days or so before and after the full moon, to watch your words when it comes to your coworkers, and to maybe not, if somebody has been demonstrating a lack of integrity, be mindful on how you express that, because it could inadvertently bounce back on you. Meaning they may not be doing their job, but how you approach it. And if you get too Martian and angry about it, and then you just sort of vent, it may be more than you really want, and it may be too public. We cannot forget about Mars's mix here with this full moon. There is an underbelly of anger and frustration. I almost feel like it's a boiling point. And while I don't think it's going to be easy for anybody, I do think that if we are aware of it, we have a better opportunity to either keep our mouth completely shut, like just hold ourselves tight until it passes, or we'll be able to express ourselves more constructively. Because those that are not expressing themselves constructively are going to kind of like go off. So be very mindful on the roads, Virgo. Be very mindful, again, in the workplace, and be nice to yourself overall with your health, just as far as stress goes, because it could just get a little funky. All right, Libra, we have this Gemini full moon in your 9th house of beliefs. And this is kind of interesting to me, because it almost feels as if there's the potential that Libra feels they have to make a choice between one thing or another. And the idea that Mars is in the mix here could make you feel very anxious about making other people angry, or that you're being, or you feel angry, and you're torn between, if I give up a belief over here, if I travel to a new philosophy, if I endeavor a different type of relationship in my life. Let's say you come from a family that really is not open-minded. Okay, they've got strong religious views, or they have issues with diversity, let's put it that way, and you feel very open. You may be torn at this time whether you are authentic to what you want, or whether you defer to what has been traditionally. And I think that this is a time for Libra to really look for that balance. And when I say that, I think of you as be sitting in the middle and kind of allowing the ebb and the flow of the seesaw of whatever's going on, because your beliefs are definitely going to shift. You're going to come to the conclusion potentially that you can no longer really tolerate small-minded people, small-minded conversation, uncontrolled anger. You know, Libra does not like confrontation. It does not like ugliness, does not like violence. So you're going to be very aware of that. And you may find even potentially that some of your friends are bugging you. They're just not acting in integrity and at a higher vibration. And you may want to start to potentially distance yourself in a very balanced way. You don't need to call them out on the mat, but you may find the differing beliefs are really starting to exasperate the relationship, and you can no longer coexist. The laws of the universe, you know, concentrated thought is a magnet for an experience. And when you've been in a compromised energy and you've been complaining, or you've been focused on the challenges, and you draw people in that will focus in on the challenges. Well, as you evolve to a ninth house minded dynamic, your inner circle of friends may not go with you that quickly. And so you may find, just to keep the peace, it's good for you to allow yourself a little bit of space so you can root yourself in your new belief system and not be pulled out too quickly. All right, Scorpio. Gemini is your 8th house. And the 8th house is naturally Scorpio. So this is a transformational from the monkey mind. I think, you know, we talk about the 9th house representing philosophies and beliefs, but it's the 8th house that gets down to that nitty gritty, the real deep psychological motivations of the human experience. And so I think that Scorpio is going to start to realize, or start to hook into an idea that if things are going to be different, it might have to start with me. And for me to look at where I've been duplicitous in some ways, where I'm wanting to achieve certain things, you may have inadvertently given up your power, been manipulated, or manipulated others. And now I think that this is a time when this is all going to come into sort of this rounded place where you're like, I really don't need to worry about that other situation or trying to control that situation, but rather let's look at me as the point of attraction. And if I'm bringing in more argumentative people, Mars is your co-ruling planet. And the moon, to me, this is like a deep psychological sort of firecracker. It might be a boiling point that, you know, the pressure cooker blows, and yet at the same time, it's so liberating for you. It feels as if it blows the socks off of the illusions of who really has the power. And I don't know what it's about. It could be power over sex, it could be power over money, it could be power over position. There's so many. With Gemini being your 8th house, could be power over your everyday activities, you know, so many things here, power over your computers and what you're looking at. But overall, I think this is a real cathartic moon for you, but it feels as if it comes on the heels of a potential upset. And we don't always have to argue with others in order to have an upset with them. We can have it within ourselves. We can literally argue with them in our own heads, and the other person has no idea. So I want to offer this. For my Scorpios, I think a really great mantra would be that you are willing to transform, and you are willing to allow yourself the privilege of the journey of transformation with grace. So you don't judge yourself. You don't judge any anger, either coming at you or from you. And you learn how to more succinctly sidestep it and to be the peaceful hero warrior that Scorpio really can represent. Sagittarius, this is going to be in your 7th house of contractual relationships. You know, oftentimes people say partnerships, and it all comes down to intimate partnerships. This house is much bigger than that. It covers professional partnerships. It covers contractual situations where two people have on paper agreed to certain terms and working together. It also rules diplomacy, and it rules policemen and civility and civil service. So what you may see in this Gemini full moon is that the partnerships that you have in your everyday life, either with siblings, your teammates, your workmates. I'm kind of not necessarily going to your intimate life right now, because with Mars going through this sign, I feel as if it's like, where am I spending my time every day? Am I enjoying myself? Am I getting the stimulation that I need as a Sagittarius? Is there enough diversity in my contractual partnerships, and not just diversity in the way of people's color of their skin or their genders, but rather what's your thought process? I as a Sagittarius, I'm naturally a broad thinker. I'm naturally going to be a joyful human. And while Gemini is a very happy energy, normally with Mars going through it, it could just be frustrated. So especially during this retrograde, that's what I'm talking about. So when we look at Mars retrograde being conjunct this moon, you may decide that some of your everyday partnerships get to be rearranged. Maybe there's going to be a renewed contract of some kind, looking at it with more information under your belt, so you can make a better informed decisions. Oftentimes when people come into business partnerships, they're only looking at things from the idealistic situation. And then you get into the everyday activities, and some of the underbelly comes to the surface. And what we thought was aligned is not quite as aligned as we thought it was. So I think that might be coming up for Sagittarius. It doesn't mean you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but maybe there's a reassignment of duties, or you just find out that you don't think alike, and bygones. We agree to disagree, and we move on to more fruitful partnerships. Capricorn, this is in your 6th house of health, not self. But I guess health is yourself, right? It's also the house that rules our pets. It rules our employment, both for employers and employees. It's a house that rules process and analysis. So here, with Gemini being your 6th house, there's an opportunity to sort of look at a new process of how you're taking care of your mental health. With Pluto transiting your 1st house for, since 2008, there's been one series of sort of traumatic transformations after another. And some of them have been directly for you. Some of them have been in your outside world. And as you're getting to the latter degrees of Pluto's transit through your 1st house, this Gemini full moon through your house of self-care. The 6th house really is, if we are married, our health affects our partnership. If we have a bad, stressy, our mental minds are going like this, it affects the people around us. So I think for Capricorn, this is really an opportunity to take this Gemini full moon and let's shift Mars up. Now, I still think Mars is going to be cranky as I'll get up during this full moon, but what if Mars is brave here? Brave to have fun, brave to be curious, brave to explore. That's the great thing about Gemini. It's very social. It's very, tell me what you've been up to. Hey, how things going? Who you dating? Where are you working? How's your mom? How's your brother? It's just blah, 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 blah. And maybe that will help your mental health. And maybe even you might even consider getting a pet if you don't already have one, or spending some time with your pet and just kind of observing how they self-care. Because Capricorn is so dutiful, and Capricorn is so obligatory. And Capricorn represents leadership. So I must do this. There are people that are depending upon me. It would be something you would hear. Now we superimpose the 6th house, which is naturally Virgo. And now we superimpose that it's your Gemini everyday activities. So there's a strong sense of service to others. And now I think this full moon may illuminate that the greatest service you can do for others is to take care of your not only physical health, but your mental health. And that comes through fun, through silly behavior, through laughing, through some time off and relaxation. All right, Aquarius. Gemini is your 5th house of romance, of self-expression, of hobbies and fun and entertainment and laughter and childlike behavior, the conception of children. Aquarius by nature is innovative. It's genius. It's outside the box. I want to color my hair blue, purple, green. I want to, dress like a fairy, all these kind of really fun, expressive, outside of the box things, it's so much fun. So this full moon I'm not really feeling necessarily the romance part of it, but there's two things I think that can happen. The idea that Mars is conjunct the moon can either make you tell everybody, I don't care what you think about how I express myself, I'm going to be me, so buzz off. It can also make you very, very brave, almost like this evolved version of, I kind of think like, Aquarius is so huge in the sense of it rules the World Wide Web. It rules huge cosmic consciousness, like big pictures. So even bigger than the 9th house of Sagittarius. So here I think there's the potential that the Gemini part of the moon is saying, I can't be bothered with any small-minded things. I can't even be bothered with my own monkey mind. I need to go investigate, explore, research, head out to go where I've never gone before with my own self-expression, my own willingness to put my wants, my desires, my needs, my having fun. And you may evaluate that some of the people in your life that aren't being fun get to sit on the sidelines. And it doesn't mean you have to end the relationship permanently, but you may find that until you anchor yourself into your Aquarian energy, because you are a little bit susceptible to feeling exiled, to feeling alienated. So sometimes you may inadvertently try to be overly there for others, and then you may not be so happy about that. You are ruled by Uranus and Saturn. So I think sometimes you get caught between feeling like you should do something versus do I want to do it? So I hope that you take the higher vibrations of Mars and Gemini, Mars being brave and adventurous and pioneering and hero energy, and be your own hero and be curious and explore and be social and allow yourself to just really focus on having some fun and see if that doesn't pop some of the energy on other things that you want to see manifested in your everyday experience. Okay, Pisces, this Gemini full moon is in your 4th house of home. And the first thing I thought about is there's the potential of arguments with siblings. Absolutely. There's the potential of historic old dynamics coming up. It's the holiday season, and there's that possibility. And you may, being a Pisces, you may have been overly compassionate, overly empathetic, overly cooperative. And the Mars dynamic might be just what you need to stand your ground. Gemini naturally rules our siblings. The 4th house rules our home environment. And Mars rules frustration and anger and resentment. And so I want to offer it to you this way, Pisces, because when you go into your intuitive body, when you, rather than try to escape the situation by being overly cooperative or just drinking too many glasses of wine during the holidays, this is an opportunity for you to say, do I want this for me? And then rather than making a statement to others, just peacefully and quietly going about your own agenda, what you need to feel at home, what you need to feel self-nurturing, to feel replenished. Overall, for everybody now, this Mars is duplistic like Gemini in that it's either going to show up really pissed off and angry and grinchy and like, take a hike, or it's going to show up as a hero. And I think it's super important to even be careful of the hero energy, because you want to make sure you save yourself so that you really can rescue others by example. So be gentle with yourself during this time. We are astrologically going through great opportunities that mankind hasn't seen before. For eons, man was at war with each other. Man was at war with nature, trying to survive. So the emotional and spiritual body truly did not get to step forward in its importance. And as we souls inhabit a human experience in these modern times, we are being offered that renovation now, the renovation of our spirit, the renovation of our emotional body. And we are unraveling this dutiful behavior to something that doesn't serve us. And then we will slowly start to realize that as we serve our own personal desires and wants, we actually are serving everyone else. And this will create a vibration on this planet that will not make us free from fear or free from obstacles, but that fear and those obstacles will start to work for us. They will be exhilarating and exciting, and as we overcome them and we triumph, we will feel more and more empowered and more sure of our co-creation, and we'll start to really use those 12 divine laws of the universe to their highest vibration, and that's very exciting. So Gemini full moon is going to be a doozy, I'll say. I can't wait to see what happens. Everybody's life is going to look a little bit different, and yet we'll all have kind of the same thing. Avoid road rage, avoid schooling people about their behavior right now, because you just don't know how someone's going to react. And frankly, the chances of them going off or being cranky or behaving in a too aggressive way are pretty high. But once we get past this, Mars will start to calm down as it moves forward out of Gemini, way over there in March of 2023. Sorry, I hate to laugh, but it's just, this is a journey of surrender to what, fighting is just really just going to wear yourself out. I think the greatest thing I have learned, and what I'm going to take away from this Gemini full moon, is that what are my thoughts? And as an Aries rising, I do have a loop of resentment. And when I'm not happy, it comes back around and back around. And then I find myself frustrated because I'm like, I should be over this by now. No, it's just another opportunity to be aware. Do I want to go around that mulberry bush, or do I just want to get to the closest next thought that takes me down the road where I really want to live? All right, guys, that's me, Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. If you'd like to book a reading with me, my information is below in the description. I am available. I do both intuitive readings as well as astrology readings. So reach out to me. Please like, please subscribe, please hit that notification bell and share these videos and comment. We'll talk to you on Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Pacific time, where we do our weekly angel scopes, where we get the angels' advice for traversing the transits of the upcoming week. Thanks again, everybody. Peace out.